Hello, hello. Today we're going to be talking about healing at the soul level, opening yourself up to new strength, intuition, and freedom from anxiety by living a power-filled life. Welcome back to the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast. And today I have a very special guest with me, Julia Hengst, who is a psychotherapist and a shamanic counselor who is going to be talking all about helping you to heal at the soul level, reclaim your lost parts, and to navigate and thrive beyond depression and anxiety using these tools. So welcome to the show, Julia. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Happy Aloha Friday.
Oh, happy Aloha Friday. Yes, yes. So despite us being a virtual conversation, Julia and I are out in the middle of the ocean, floating around here out on Maui, but easier to do these things on the Zooms. And it may or may not be Friday whenever you're listening to this. So happy Aloha, whatever day it is for you when you're listening to this in the future. So you can read about Julia in her bio, and there's some funny stuff in there, so you should read it. But I like to just jump into the deep end. You know me, Julia and I actually have worked together. We worked together actually after we had the fires here on Maui, and she helped me to heal and navigate through all of that, as she did with many other of our community members. So beautiful work. Thank you for doing that. And so you can get to know more about her professionally in the bio, but also through our conversation now. But I like to introduce you to the podcast and to our listeners by having you tell us a little bit about part of your story and your journey, and maybe take us to a moment in time when you yourself were dealing with some of these challenges, maybe anxiety or depression or both or whatever, that really led you to where you are now, and also to do the work that you're doing to be able to share these tools.
Yeah, a little bit of background that is relevant is that I was born in Texas. I like to say that I'm fully recovered. No disrespect, Texas. Um, when I was a teenager, my dad moved out of the country for his job, and my mom moved to Santa Cruz. So I moved to Santa Cruz and ended up going to a high school that was founded around an Indian yogi named Baba Haridas, who was one of Ram Dass's teachers, who Baba Haridas took a vow of silence that he kept for about 75 years. He was the real deal, a real yogi, a Bhagavad Gita scholar. But this was like a different planet for me. But that was the first step in terms of understanding a sort of more spiritual perspective and understanding the idea of subduing one's mind, training the mind. And also around that time, I started doing some therapy because my parents got divorced. And if I would say jumping ahead 10 or 15 years after many years of therapy and a lot of meditation retreats and that sort of thing, I was still struggling with some anxiety, some depression, some relationship patterns. And I was extra frustrated because I was like, I have been working on some of these patterns for so many years. Why are they still coming up? And thanks to my mom networking me with my mentor, Sue Feathers, one of my shamanic mentors, I had a session with her, and it was a soul retrieval session, and it was so visceral and powerful that I Googled what is shamanism, and I was in my 30s at the time, and I lived in Berkeley, and nearby was a center called the Foundation of the Sacred Stream that had a very methodical course for studying all sorts of things, but I focused on becoming a depth hypnosis practitioner and with a focus on shamanic counseling. And what I found was that, as the Dalai Lama said maybe 4 years ago, because I have a background in Buddhist psychology as well, that Western psychology is currently at kindergarten level in terms of understanding the mind, which is very humbling to hear. He said it's very good at describing what's wrong with people, but not yet good enough at describing what's right with people and how to heal. So when I started studying the soul approach to therapy, I found that it filled in a lot of the gaps of Western psychology. There was an emphasis on positive psychology, on looking at what's right with us. There were techniques for how to find these parts of ourselves that we've lost. It's very creative. We use our imagination. So for any of us who have a busy mind, it's really cool. Doesn't mean you have to have a super quiet mind. You can have a pretty active mind, and these techniques are really helpful for rediscovering parts of ourselves. And the effects are quite visceral as well. So all of those, it wasn't just an intellectual experience, it was very visceral, which is really important.
Well, I love that, and such an eclectic background, and what an interesting way that all of these pieces have woven together in your life. And I can say from personal experience that it did feel like a really interesting approach to healing and to navigating challenges. And especially as someone with a busy mind, it was refreshing. And I appreciate you sharing all of that so honestly. And so something you said leads me to my first question that, many of us might be able to relate to, and myself, I can for sure, is that, trying different modalities, different approaches. And many people in this community are like, doing all the things, and they're drinking the special coffee, and they're doing the this and the breath work and the, plunge and blah, 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 but not having the resolve or the clarity or the spaciousness or the healing that they want, or they feel like they should be at, quote unquote, whatever that means. Do you find for yourself, you pointed it out, that that it felt like something was missing, that you hadn't got to that point, and so do you find that a lot of people come to you, and where does this soul retrieval fit into the fact that for many of us, we feel like, gosh, like, what is this? There's this some missing piece that I can't put my finger on, but I know that I haven't figured it out yet. I know that there's something that's missing. And so can you speak to that from your perspective of the soul retrieval tool set?
Yes, and I felt that frustration of like, when I go into like self work, I am like nerd alert, like going deep journaling, like all of the tools, body work, somatic work, etc. So it was very frustrating. And one of the things that was really helpful to me that Sue Feathers said in the very first session, she was like, "Is this going to be a one-off thing or ongoing?" And I was like, honestly, I don't even really know what you do. But there are some patterns that haven't shifted. And how she put it was that even if we've been working on something for years and years with different modalities, if the soul part isn't back in us, then it might not have much traction. But when the soul part is back, then any work we do around that issue is going to have more traction. And the idea in shamanic healing is that sometimes a soul retrieval, and there are also, by the way, power retrievals and extractions and other methods, but sometimes a soul retrieval starts a healing process. Sometimes it sustains one and keeps it going, and sometimes it's the thing that ends a healing process, like it brings us to completion. And just one soul retrieval can rebalance us on certain issues. So I found that very, very helpful, and it gave me a lot of hope. And there was a period I was like, I'm going to find all my soul parts. I'm going to do a soul retrieval a day if I can. So if you're somebody who likes to take a lot of action and you've done a lot of mapping of your trauma and that sort of thing, it's really helpful because then you can do strike missions.
Oh, I like that. And so I think no, I shouldn't say that. Can you explain to us what you mean by soul retrieval, just so that we all have some clarity on the languaging here? Because, those two words, separation, might make sense to people, but together they're like, hold, please, where's my soul? Why am I
Yeah,
retrieving
yeah, right.
it?
So this comes from the framework that we're fundamentally made of energy, and the subtler parts of our being can be known as our soul, or our energy body. And during moments of acute trauma, when something happens suddenly that's shocking, so it could be anything. It could be, anything that causes PTSD, any sort of abuse. It can also be related to feelings, though. If we experience something like where we're humiliated or embarrassed, or feel really intensely rejected, part of our energy body or soul body breaks off and it gets frozen outside of time and space. And that soul part, as it's known, carries with it the feelings that were too overwhelming for us to handle in the moment. But the soul part often, always actually, carries gifts of ours too that we become disconnected from. So you could say soul loss is another word for dissociation. And that's where in psychology you might know, oh, I dissociate there, but it's like, but where did that piece go? So in shamanism, actually a lot of illness is related, of different kinds, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, is really related to soul loss. So those parts can be tracked and brought back and reintegrated into our psyche. So it's a fragment of our psyche, to put it into psychological language.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That helps. And so in relation to, and as you said there, in shamanism and from this perspective, illness, including mental health challenges, probably anxiety and depression, could be part of this, caused by this, like a symptom, like how would you explain that?
Absolutely. Symptoms, typically, if we've lost parts of ourselves, I mean, one of the important diagnostic questions to figure out if you have soul loss, which I'm fascinated to discover that almost everyone who hears about soul loss, they know if they have it. And so one of the diagnostic questions is, have you ever had an experience where ever since then you haven't felt quite the same? Or ever since then you feel like you lost part of yourself? This can happen in relationships. One of my mentors says we've built soul loss into our wedding vows. I give you my heart. Um, she said it's better to share your heart, not give it away, but we give away pieces of ourselves all over the place. So that that's crucial to think about. So symptoms can be anxiety, depression, feeling stuck, feeling like you have bad luck, no matter what you've done. And then that leads into other things, because if we have soul loss where we're missing pieces of ourselves, it means we don't have as much of a defense mechanism for sort of preventing other energies from coming into us, which means we can be more affected by things externally. Whereas if we're full of ourselves in a good way, we're more grounded, we're more connected to our bodies. And that's also something interesting, is soul parts will eject or leave from different parts of our body and from different chakras, if you're familiar with that system. So we can actually learn to use our bodies as sort of like a Doppler radar for like geolocating where we might have soul loss. And if you think about it, it's the ways some people describe their bodies, they're like, I don't have sensation down there or this or that. It usually means like they're dissociated, they're disconnected. So when soul parts come back, that's why I'm saying this can be really visceral. And that's one thing that really swayed my perspective when I started doing this work, was like I started feeling the difference in a way that I hadn't with just traditional talk therapy.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And I mean, my guess, as you said, is that pretty much everybody can say they've had an experience where they went through it and they felt different, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. My mentors say just being born on this planet is enough to experience soul loss.
right?
There's
Especially right now, my God.
susceptible groups. If you think of African Americans and Native
Sure.
Americans in this country have experienced group soul loss. I mean, it gets pretty deep. The concept of soul loss is profound.
Oof, I just got goosebumps. Yeah,
Me
that's so
too.
interesting. Yeah, and I mean that would probably have a role to play in generational trauma and identity and whew, yeah, that's
Yeah,
a whole
yeah.
other conversation, I would imagine.
There's a whole rabbit hole. There's soul loss from past lifetimes, if you believe in that. I mean, it gets
1,000%.
pretty deep. Yeah.
Yeah, which we will talk about after this. Because it's somewhat relevant. Yes. Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Okay. So, yeah. Wow. And so if someone recognizes, okay, yes, I've definitely had experiences where I feel like I went through something that was really intense, little T, big T trauma, and they recognize that there is likely some soul loss that they would like to resolve and retrieve. I know that's a big part of what you do in your counseling services, and we will share a way for you to connect further with Julia at the end. But let's just talk about, like, for reintegration, for healing, for navigating the craziness of life, once we figure this out, what would you say is essential for us to know and to do
Mm.
from this point forward?
It's a good question. And one of the most important things from the perspective of shamanic healing is to go through life power filled. And if we're power filled, I mean, ultimately, like from the Buddhist perspective, if we become totally power filled, we start emitting energy and power that even scares away interferences, to put it in that language. And from that perspective, we can totally heal from trauma. We might have scar tissue, but we can totally heal. So just as they've discovered in EMDR therapy and other trauma-informed therapy modalities, that if we go back to try to heal a traumatic or painful memory and we're not resourced, as they put it, we can get re-traumatized. We can get pulled back into the emotions. We might start ruminating again. We might have like flashbacks or dreams. In shamanic language, we need to be power filled. So before we do a soul retrieval, we connect with we call them, in the training I've done, guides of higher consciousness. So in traditional shamanism, which people would say is pretty woo-woo, but my motto is putting the woo into woo-woo. We need to be power filled, so we will meet with, traditionally the first power retrieval is we connect with a power animal. And after that, the guides of higher consciousness can come in any form. And what I've discovered is whether you believe that these power animals or guides are something external, like you believe in helping spirits or the spirit world, or you just feel like it's part of your mind that you're accessing, like parts work, it's still effective, even if you don't go the woo-woo route. I do think there are some extra benefits if you're open to that, but so going through life power filled is important. And if you go through life power filled, and also, by the way, anytime you do a soul retrieval, automatically a power retrieval happens as well. The symptoms start to shift. We become more present, more sensations in our body. We don't get rocked by as much stuff. Of course, suffering will still happen on this planet, but we become more resilient. So power filling is very, very important. And even just going outside and being in nature for 5 minutes is a very simple way of power filling, just letting yourself receive energy and mana from nature.
I love that. And I love, I'm always, and I know you do too, and so many of our listeners, we're always looking for the intersection between these worlds of spirituality and science. And, my opinion is they're really one and the same. We're all just using different words for the same thing. Because everything you're talking about the power field, is talking about heart coherence and the electromagnetic frequency. And it sends things off. And so it's like, I have my own, I like that you put the woo in it, but I'm always like, it's science, man. You don't like
Totally science. Even if you think about it, Megan, if you do, let's say you do a power retrieval, and so shamanism, your shamanic journeys communicate in the same language as dreams, which is through symbols. So the guides of higher consciousness come in the form of a symbol. It might be a dragon, or it might be a pyramid, or whatever it is. But that symbol might bring you the power of your voice, or the power of boundaries, or the power of self-love, or whatever, self-acceptance. Anytime you think of that symbol, it's activating the neural pathway and the neural map that's associated with that power. So again, I don't think it matters if you have a scientific, I have a pretty scientific mind as well. So that was always really important to me, that this adds up. And it was really a trip to discover the EMDR language, and this idea of being power filled is the same. It's just approaching it from different perspectives.
Right. And look at that. Indigenous cultures and wisdom traditions, once again, showing us the way.
Absolutely. Right.
I feel like I say
Big
that like on
thing.
every episode. And yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Because it's always, I say that, you know, with a cheeky tone, but I'm like of the ultimate reference because hello. For every
Exactly.
reason we just said. And I was telling Julia before we got started that I basically have like the jungle book of spirit guides now. Like between my giraffe and my elephant and my glow in the dark tiger. And then I recently acquired a snake, which I was terrified of, but not anymore. And like just it's
Yeah.
open your heart, right? There's so much. And that's why I have you on, because this is such a fascinating concept. And so something you said there actually segues beautifully into the next section. But you know, again, you said going out in nature can fill us with power. And I'm sure you've heard by now of, you know, grounding and forest walks and all these things that are hot and, you know, like everybody's doing them now. But it's again circling back to this beautiful tradition, right? And so do you have anything to say on that before we move forward into our little special power pause?
Yeah, I remember, I think it was on NPR, I heard a gentleman who is a sound healer, and he was talking about how the rhythm of the oceans, I'm sorry, the waves at the ocean is similar to the human heartbeat. Um, and so if you just hear the sound of the waves, it can harmonize you with a heartbeat. It can regulate your nervous system. So we're made of the same elements. So it makes sense. And I think, you know, the Dalai Lama has said he's very excited to be alive in this era because he said a lot of Buddhism will be proven true by science. And I think the same goes for these sorts of practices.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's so interesting, right? Like even in yoga, we have all these bandhas and then core it's like it's just really interesting, you know, this not that Buddhism needs to be validated by any means, but it's like that's what's happening, right? It's validated by, you know, modern science and understanding it, but it's like it's so incredible because these practices are so rich and lasting for a reason, clearly, and there's this intermingling around the world and these different languaging for the same thing. And so I love that. I love this concept of being power filled, right? Power filled compared to powerful, because of course we see all this imbalance of power and everything. And so it's like,
Yeah.
well, it can make your head spin and your heart explode. But let's
Yeah.
come back to just being power filled
Yeah.
and how we can do that. And so we have reached the section of our episode where we are going to take a soulful power pause for healing and strength and learn how to get grounded in nature anywhere, like even on an airplane or in an office. You don't even have to be in nature, because Julia is going to take us through an exercise to help us to do that. So would you please?
Yes. And um, just to know that um, going to what's called your journey spot or your power place is foundational when you learn how to do shamanic journeys. So this is a basic building block for any other type of work you do. This is a very brief version, but it hopefully will help you learn how to begin to tune into nature inside your own mind. And I love that you said you can do it anywhere, because it's very easy to get into this idea of, oh, I don't have time, I can't do this, etc. You can do this while you're sitting on a subway, in a car, you can do it anywhere. And even just 2 to 3 minutes is really helpful. So, all right. So I invite you to close your eyes along with me. And first and foremost, just simply notice where your breath is. Noticing all of the places where your breath meets the different parts of your body. Noticing where your breath goes as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Noticing how your breath is like a bridge between your outer and your inner worlds. And with each breath, you find yourself drawing more and more closely to your inner world. We're going to be taking a journey to that place in your inner world where everything you've ever known or sensed felt, imagined, or experienced is recorded, and where you will reconnect with the rhythm of nature herself. So as your gaze turns inward, imagine a place in nature where you feel comfortable and at peace. And this place can be a real place that you've visited or seen, or it can be entirely imagined. So letting whatever this place is, just know it is filled with your favorite elements of nature. Whether you're drawn to a place near water or near mountains or trees, the desert, a cave, just letting an image come to you. And as you imagine yourself in that place, notice what it feels like to be in that place. Noticing if there is a breeze or if the air is still. Listening for any sounds. Noticing the quality of light, if it's day or if it's night. Remembering how much this place is a part of you and you are a part of it. And as you give yourself complete permission to connect with this place, let every cell harmonize with the rhythm of nature as you remember that you are nature. You are made of the same elements: fire, earth, air, water, space. And as you deepen your connection to this place, not having to fix anything or do anything, just letting yourself receive the healing energy of nature, just as a flower receives light from the sun. And taking a final 3 breaths, let yourself breathe with the earth herself. And gently bringing that to a close and bringing all of that mana with you back into the outer world.
Oh, thank you. That was so lovely. And so what we just did there was a beautiful little soulful power pause. And if you're watching this video all on its own, that power pause was part of a full episode of the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast on healing at a soul level with our beautiful guest here, Julia. And so if you want to get a deeper understanding for everything we're talking about and how we got to this point in the conversation, make sure to check out the whole episode because there's so much magic over there. And so for those of you that are unfamiliar, mana is the same concept as prana or chi or life force energy or the pulse of life that you see in nature, that hopefully you are feeling inside your whole beingness now and that you are filled up with. So thank you so much, Julia. That was lovely.
My pleasure.
So it's such a beautiful practice and so simple, right? And so I can see how, really anchoring into that and grounding into that because, being part of nature, we're part of nature. And we forget that sometimes because we're so part of technology. And so really anchoring back into that place on a consistent basis, I would imagine is so powerful. And so, and healing and reconnecting to self and anchoring back in the body, right? In that peace, that knowing that comes when we drop into that stillness and reconnect to the parts of who we are. And so you spoke to this a little bit, but I'd love to maybe bring our conversation to a close by speaking to what happens with people when we reclaim these parts of ourselves, when we fill ourselves with power and really bring this back to wholeness. What do you notice when it comes to people's life experience or being able to navigate challenging situations or, anxiety, depression? Like, what do you see as a beautiful outcome and byproduct of doing that practice or these practices or working with you?
Hmm, good question. The first thing I would say is that our resilience increases, where we're able to weather whatever uh, um, qualities of the day are happening, whether it's stormy weather or otherwise. We can bounce back from things faster. Another thing that I've seen not only in myself, but in many clients is people reconnect with their intuition more. Because if we don't have these parts, we sort of tend to seek outward. Uh, we seek advice, we seek guidance, and the more pieces of ourselves we get back, we can hear our own intuition more. So typically there's more confidence. It's easier to connect with people. I think this is really crucial to say, it's possible to feel a lot more pleasure in the body. Uh, joy energy. As one of my Buddhist mentors, Robert Thurman, says, all of the chakras can have orgasms. I say that in terms of it's important just to know that we can flow joy or bliss energy through our whole body, and this actually makes it easier because it's sort of like if a soul part comes back, it's like the train can run over those tracks more easily, so energy can move more peacefully throughout our body. And one other point I would like to say, especially for anyone who's done a lot of therapy and they're curious about soul retrievals, is that soul parts will only come back if they know it's safe. So if anyone has done a lot of work, that actually helps create safety. So these young parts know that the adult self will be able to take care of them. So part of soul parts coming back is we become our own father, mother. So if soul parts, again, they bring back feelings that maybe were too overwhelming for us at the time. So maybe it's grief or maybe it's anger or sadness we didn't get to express. It's not unusual that when a soul part comes back, we might be watching a movie and suddenly we cry for like an hour and it's like, where did that come from? It might be that soul part finally getting to express its feelings, and the adult self that's done all of this work is able to hold space for these parts in a way that maybe they didn't have space held for them before. So in addition to the feelings being able to be processed, sort of the emotional circuit getting to complete, these parts also bring back gifts. So I've had clients who rediscovered the gift of play or innocence or creativity. So parts that we got disconnected. A lot of people come and they're like, I'm just not creative. I used to be when I was little, but I'm not anymore. Those parts can come back. So it's not unusual that people have had creative energies return, and that's a huge gift.
For sure. Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's this beautiful reintegration, and it seems appropriate since we're talking so much about Buddhism, but like the many petals of the flower of the lotus that is you, right? And bringing back these parts, but the parts returning when they know that it's safe, right? And you're going to be able to hold them and nurture them and tend in this beautiful way. So it really sounds like a return, part by part, piece by piece, retrieval by retrieval, a return to wholeness in a sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm. Lovely. Wow, that's beautiful. And it's just such a beautiful practice and the simplicity of it. And so I know that, what we did there was helping people to really drop into that energy and begin the journey, and to fill themselves with power and presence and mana. And so if people are interested in learning more, because I know they will be, what would the next step be to be able to connect with you and learn more about these tools?
Yeah, well, I have a website, nonordinarypsychology.com, and people are welcome to reach out. I do a free 20-minute consultation. I am licensed as an MFT in both California and Hawaii, but I work with people all over the country, in fact, all over the world as a shamanic practitioner. So that takes care of the license issue.
Perfect. Way to open yourself up to global impact. I love
That's great.
it. Because hell, we all need it, right? And so
Yeah.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. And so that, and all of the links and such will be in the description in the show notes as well. So make sure to go over and learn more about non-ordinary psychology. That's brilliant. And hello, Rooster. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's what that is. Don't worry. Everyone's fine. It's roosters in the backyard. And so as we wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to include in the conversation that we didn't get to, or anything that you feel like would kind of weave it all together that you wanted to finish up with?
No, I think your questions were really spot on. So I feel complete.
Oh, well, lovely. Thank you so much. Well, then, beautiful. So this is really helping us to heal at the soul level and look at the world essentially, and your life and yourself and your persona, and the challenges that you get presented with from a different perspective. And so looking at how you can go back and tend to and retrieve these beautiful parts of you. And I will tell you, it's quite an incredible experience to be able to work with Julia and to be able to reclaim and to have these tools that you can then use to recognize, that life happens, and that we get to navigate it, and open our minds and hearts to these beautiful perspectives, right? And so, if you've got a little bit maybe up to your eyeballs, and or maybe a little frustrated with other modalities that haven't been working, maybe this is it. Maybe like this is the piece that's going to bring all of that, and so who knows? So I love that you were on here, and thank you for sharing your work with the world first and foremost, but also sharing it with us today, Julia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor.
Lovely. Well, make sure to check out the links in the show notes, and also to please share this episode with anyone that you think would be open-minded, open-hearted to this, doing this beautiful integration and power filling. Like, hello, that's so powerful. I could have picked another word, but it seemed appropriate. So please feel free to share the episode, take a screenshot, and tag us on your social medias and spread the word, because these are incredible healing tools to help you to, blossom as the beautiful flower that you are. And so thank you everyone for being part of this incredible community. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you again, Julia. It's been lovely chatting with you. And also for all of you reclaiming your power, tell us about your experience when you take us on the socials. Tell us where you went, how it was, because I know I would love to know, and I know Julia would love to know as well. So thank you, everybody. And until next time, please take good care of your beautiful self, because you are incredible and needed and loved and worthy and deserving and all of the things, all the things. You're all of it. Okay. Love you a lot. Okay. Bye.